Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from the CUNY TV Foundation, Capital One Bank, Genova Burns, Gian Tomasi and Webster, New York Community Bank, the Witkoff Group, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company. Additional funding is provided by grants from AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Colliers International NYC, Cushman and Wakefield, Customers Bank, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Eastern Union Funding, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Gemini Real Estate Advisors LLC, Herrick Feinstein LLP, Hersha Hospitality Trust, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides Centurion Holdings, Margolin Weiner and Evans LLP, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Matone Group, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, New Banks, People's United Bank, RBS Citizens Bank, SJP Properties, Sterling and Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, The Continuum Company, LLC, and these friends.
So what happens? You know, you grow up in Brooklyn, then you go to Queens, you go to a Catholic school, and then you try to be a football player. Go to college, you don't go to one college, you go to 5 colleges. Then you come back, and you know, what do you try to do? You're going to work with Citibank, and then you're going to work with Restaurant Associates, and subsequently, hey, maybe a mortgage broker. After that, nah, forget the mortgage broker. I'm going to be a musician. I'm going to run there. I'm going to run this music group over there. I'm going to get these other people. But no, maybe those sunglasses, the sunglasses, are going to help. And then they be advertising. But the advertising executive of the year? An author? I don't understand. The Tanning of America? The producer? The guy who created the logo for the Nets? I got Steve Stoute, and we're going to have fun today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell me a little bit about your parents.
My dad was a marine engineer, and my mom was a nurse. They came in as immigrants from Trinidad in the late 60s. And
they settled in Bed-Stuy, right?
In Brooklyn, yeah.
And then you were born where?
I was born in Brooklyn. I was actually born in Manhattan, but we lived in Brooklyn. And we moved to Queens when I was about six years old.
Right, so tell me about the youth. You know, you were an entrepreneur. You had a newspaper route. You had some other things.
I had 2 newspaper routes.
Yeah, you had the news and news thing.
Newsday.
You wanted to keep both of them in line.
Yeah.
But besides that, I mean, you were always an entrepreneur because you said to me, one of the things that you always wanted to make money. You wanted to help because your mom and dad kept a couple of jobs. You know, he worked 2 or 3 jobs. So you wanted to be there to help out in the family, right?
You know, a lot of immigrants that came to America early, it was a very common thing to have multiple jobs to make ends meet, in order to build a foundation for your family. And you know, as soon as I got a chance that I felt like, you know, I could walk, I could represent myself, that if I could make any amount of money to help ease that off my mom and dad, that I would. So very early on, as soon as I got a chance, I would always try to find odd jobs, and I mean literally from you read the bio, like singing Christmas carols to shoveling snow.
I can't believe, I know the shoveling snow, but the Christmas carols?
Christmas
I
carols.
didn't realize that your voice was so...
No, if you do it with a bunch of other kids, you can blend in and you make some money.
So you did the Christmas carols, you did that. Now, did you go to always parochial school, Catholic school?
No, I went to public school up to 3rd grade, and then we transferred in the 3rd grade to Catholic school, St. Joachim and Anne in Queens.
Now, one of the things you like is you said you like the competitiveness of sports.
Yeah.
So when did you get involved with football? I mean,
Well, I always liked the competitiveness of sports, even when I didn't play high school. But I always played Pop Warner football. But I like competitive environments in general. Sports was a way to do it at a high school level, and I joined. I started playing football as a junior in high school.
one of the things that really you remember in your life was you went out to Belmont Raceway, and you were working in the flea markets over there.
Yeah.
And there was the incident, because you wanted to make a couple bucks, you would go each day and help them set up these tanks.
Yeah.
Okay? But the one day, this guy gave you $1,000. Tell me
Yeah.
that story, because that's a very
Yeah,
instrumental
well,
part of your life.
It was a very pivotal part in my life. So I'd go to Belmont Racetrack, as you said, and I'd set up the flea market. They'd have flea markets there on the weekends. And I'd go and help all the vendors set up their tents. And, you know, you get there nice and early, 6 in the morning, and you set them up. And if you set up a couple, maybe one guy would actually hire you to work during the day. So you'll set it up, you'll stay with him during the day, and then you'll help him break down and help others break down, and that'd be great. So one guy I was helping set up, and he had to go pay the rent for the season for his lot. And he said, look, he had all his goods there. He said, look, I'll give you the money, and you go pay. You go to the main entrance or wherever the
Right, the administration, the office. Right?
office, and you pay it. And he gave me $1,000, and it was, I didn't know this man from at all. And I was like, you know, I must have been 12. I'm like, this is a lot of money. It felt like $1 million to me at 12. And it ran through my mind, like, if I never come back, would he ever know? I mean, why would he? This is kind of, and naturally, I didn't do that. I went and I paid pay his rental for the season. But to me, it was important that somebody gave me that level of responsibility. And I had so much pride and confidence that I could handle a transaction of that amount.
Right, because
You know,
you're
just-
a kid. And
Yeah, just to even count it and make sure they got the receipt. The transaction, the weight of the transaction, for me it was a big confidence builder early in my life.
you graduated high school when?
In 1988.
1988.
Yeah, look, college was a mess for me. I mean,
College wasn't great for me either.
okay, I went to 5 colleges in 2 years, and all I kept on trying to do was trying to satisfy my parents by going to college. Because if they said, my son's in college, then that meant their son was doing well. They could tell their friends my son's in college. So I wanted to keep that thing going for them, but at the same time, what I was trying to do was get to where I wanted to go in life. So if I ever decided to say, Mom and Dad, I'm not in college anymore, but I'm doing this. So I had to get the this part nailed down before I could.
So, you know, your father worked a couple of jobs. He was a merchant marine. You know, he was on the cargo ships and all this, and your mom was an aide. What did you think that you would? I mean, you're 43 years of age. You know, you became the advertising executive. You were president of music studios. What did you know, you wanted to make money, but was there anything that you thought you were going to do? I mean, that you wouldn't see that you are today what you were when a kid.
No, there was no. And I can't say that what you're going to see from me 10 years from now is what will make sense today. I was always somebody that was dream and feel like there's nothing I can't do. And people say that all the time, but you got to be willing to put yourself in that uncomfortable situation to learn something you don't know and be willing to go to the bottom in order to figure that out.
So you finish the 5 colleges, and then you get a job working with Citibank in a teller pool. What was this teller pool? Because I think all of these jobs have an effect on how you have a 150 people agency today and all the rest.
Well, I got a job at Citibank early, and I was a bank teller, and then I started in their corporate office, and I used to manage, they used to call pool tellers. And these were tellers that would fill in for people when they had sick days or vacation days, and you would have tellers that would be in a pool that would be dispersed when people called in sick or to fill vacation days. And they would be at random, and what I did was I worked on developing a system so that the pool tellers would be, it wouldn't be as random. The schedules would be automated. And I worked on automating that system, and that was another big step for me, because I went from a bank teller to actually managing a pool of tellers, and in developing that system. and the executives at Citibank took notice. And again, these are all little confidence builders that let me know that I can go further.
Let's talk about
and
restaurant.
do more things I couldn't
Then you
do.
went to Restaurant Associates, right?
Yeah, I didn't know it was Restaurant Associates at that time.
You thought it was Zoom Zoom, right?
No, I didn't know it was Zoom Zoom. I just thought it was a confectionery company that sold candy and newspaper. And I worked at their corporate offices, and very similar, my pool teller schedule came in, automating the pool teller schedule came in handy with that job, because what happened there was they didn't have registers at these confectionery stands. So they would basically have to do inventory at the end of the month to make sure that what they took in an inventory and what they sold equal the balance sheet. That's how you'd balance a sheet. Anyhow, again, I worked on creating an automated system that would, day in and day out, take virtual inventory. And it was a very big deal. And I'd have them hire all my friends so that they would take physical inventory to make sure that that virtual inventory
So you even helped
proved
the
itself.
community.
So I helped I didn't help the community, I helped my
Your
friends.
buddies, that's what I meant.
Yeah, it wasn't the community.
Okay, so then how do you get involved with residential mortgages with the guy over there where you had the 60-40 split, okay?
Yeah. Well, the residential mortgages, my next door neighbor was he was a mortgage broker. He was a guy who wanted to get into the mortgage business, or was in the mortgage business, and he used to do a lot of it through the church community. He was tied very closely to the church community. And I would do odd jobs, and he was one of the people that hired me to do whether lawn mowing or plumbing or whatever it was. And he brought me on to help him with his business, and I realized that I could add more value to his business if I really got involved in it. And I understood, not a lot of it, I just knew, I was a hustler. I knew how to speak to people and get
Right,
them.
you used to knock on doors, right? You used to
Yeah.
go visit people who had in-ram situations. You went on to knock on doors, non-conforming loans, right?
Yeah. People who had problems with not paying their taxes with the city, I'd knock on their door. They wouldn't answer their door. I'd knock on their door. I'd try to convince them to answer the door as they peeked through the window. And some of them I would get a chance to help them get loans from the city, loans from a bank to pay off their debt to the city.
So now, with this background, a lot of entrepreneurial, dealing with people, helping friends, how do you get to be a director, a musical director, stringing on with a new group? What was the first thing in music?
Well, the first thing I did in music, I was a road manager for a group called Kid and Play. I took some of the earnings I took from the real estate business, and I bought some equipment for a young producer. I met that producer through an ex-girlfriend who was in the, what do you call the Army when you just go on the weekends?
Reserves.
The reserves.
I did that.
Yeah.
It was a weekend warrior.
It's like a weekend warrior Army guy. So he was a weekend warrior Army guy like she was. And she met him there, and I met him, and I bought him equipment. He had made some records before, not necessarily popular, but he needed some equipment, and I figured I could invest and buy him some equipment. So I bought like, $10,000 worth of equipment, which was a big deal back then.
No question.
Yeah, and through that experience and through helping him, we formed the company, and through those experiences, I met Kid and Play, and they hired me as their road manager.
And after Kid and Play, how do you get from the road manager to the record labels?
We, working with Kid and Play, went on to become their manager. A record company executive heard of me, brought me in for an interview, hired me. It was, I was very fortunate. What I believe and what paid off for me and what I try to profess all the time is that, doing what you say is a very important thing. Not just saying it, but really living it out and doing whatever it takes to follow through on what you believe in. And persistence, the power of persistence has paid well for me.
You go to one record label, and then after that record label, how do you end up at Sony?
In that business, once you're in the business, people notice your work, and they call you, they call who they believe is the best piece on the chessboard that could be obtained in order to further their ideas further their mission.
Now-
And Sony needed a young executive who understood rap music and knew the producers and the artists, and that's how I got the call. In fact, I got the call from Mariah Carey first because her husband was the head of Sony. She called me, and she got me in, actually. And then I took on the job.
And then this is like 1997, and you know, there's the movie Men in Black, right?
Yeah.
And you, the hip guy, the rap guy, whatever you want to call him, sees Will Smith with the sunglasses. And
Well, I'd known Will Smith for years. I'd known Will Smith from early in my career. And he, I brought him to Sony. He wasn't on Sony. He had his film deal at Sony, but as a record artist, he was on another company. We got him over to Sony, and the first thing we did under that arrangement was the Men in Black soundtrack. And he had brought that song in. He played it for me, and I thought it was great, great family fun. But it was just going to be, you know,
right,
something that was going to take over.
But what happened was that really took you to the next step of your life, because the sunglasses,
Yeah.
the Ray-Ban. Let's talk about that.
Well, the sunglasses, we sold 10 million albums, and it was like, woo! But the glasses was selling with no promotion, no anything. It was just the glasses. And I kept on saying, I know why we're happy, but the guys over at Bosch and Lomb are really happy as well, because the glasses were in close proximity to a cultural movement, this song, this movie, and now the glasses are selling like
And
crazy.
the glasses were dead before. The Ray-Ban.
I don't want to say the glasses were dead.
No, but the Ray-Ban was falling out.
The glasses were in purgatory.
Okay, good. So you get involved with Ray-Ban and Bosch and Loeb over there, and this is like 1997 or a little later. How do you make the transition from music to the advertising world to get involved with Peter Arnell?
Because of the phenomenon around the glasses selling the way they were selling, I wanted to find out who was the advertising company, who was benefiting from this. That's the first thing I wanted. All right, I knew it was Bosch and Lomb, but who was there was an ad agency getting credit for it. But I knew they really didn't have anything to do with what was going on. But I wanted to know what an advertising agency was. I didn't even know what an advertising agency was in '97, to be completely frank with you, Michael. So I went and found the advertising agency that represented Bosch and Lomb, and it was Arnell Group. And what I knew was, if there was a company getting credit for this coincidence, I knew I could create this coincidence all day long, because I had my finger on what was popular culture. And if I could find brands that wanted to be closely related or have some association with popular culture, I should develop an advertising agency.
Right, because we didn't say, but who were some of your clients? I mean, going back from the music days. Eminem was one of your clients, right?
Oh, when you call them, yeah, I worked, over my career, Eminem and Mariah and Mary J. Blige and Nas, No Doubt, many artists.
Right, and you go from Jay-Z.
Yeah, Jay-Z. There's many artists that I've worked with.
Right, but taking what you had in the music, following up with the Ray-Ban, is then you get involved with Arnell.
Yeah.
And as one of the articles said, you didn't pay to join him. He needed you. It was like sweat equity over there.
Yeah, it was sweat equity.
Sweat equity over there, and you're there for a couple of years, and then the two of you sell the business to Omnicom. And then what do you do?
I take probably 2 months off. We sold it. We did really well. I took 2 months off, thought about what was next, and I invested in a beauty line called Carol's Daughter.
Right.
A woman named Lisa Price, who had this small line that she is operating out of her home and had one retail store. And I invested in her, and then put together an investment group to invest in her. Now I could say that she's on Home Shopping Network and 2,000 points of distribution.
I watched the video yesterday.
Yeah, so that's cool. And I started translation.
So what was translation? Because translation is always in the book, everything you talk about is translation. How did you come up with the name translation, and what was translation?
What I realized in my experience with Arnell, the 4 years I was there, or 3 years, was that corporate America wanted to understand what was taking place in culture, and they wanted culture to inform their communications, and they wanted to have some understanding of it as they started to roll out product and roll out new products and everything that they were doing. But the advertising agencies would not give them exposure to what was taking place in culture. For some reason, it would just be a disconnect between culture and these companies. And the ad agency, which is supposed to be the conduit to that, wasn't doing that. And I realized that the ad agencies at that time, they just didn't have any exposure to it. They were becoming as stodgy as the company itself. So when I started my agency, I wanted it to be translating culture to corporate America.
Right.
And that's where the name came from.
Right.
I was shocked it was available.
Right, but what was interesting when I was reading the book and doing some research, and I still remember when Reebok came out, because I'm a little older than you, and when Reebok came out, you know, they were a hip item for the days in the 80s, okay?
Yeah.
But then, you know,
The aerobics craze.
the aerobics craze and everybody. But Reebok was a dead brand when you met with Paul Thurman, okay?
Yeah.
They were in major trouble, and you. What do you do for Reebok? Because that's one of the pivotal things you did with the RBK.
Yeah, well Paul Feynman was a great supporter of mine. I went to the Reebok offices on a Friday, and at 2, and he had come back in. He was the founder. It got really big, became public. He left and went on to do something else. They put professional management in. It failed. He came back in, you know, to save his company. And he put the communications out for review. I was one of the companies that somehow came up, that got the fortune to go see him. And I got there at 2:30, and there was nobody there, Mike. You know, there's something about when a company's failing, the employees start leaving early. You know, you start seeing the morale of the company start going down. And I came up there, and I felt like, you know what, Paul, we can turn this whole thing around. And what we're going to do is, we're not going to try to outbeat Nike at what Nike does. No one thinks that they're going to be able to run faster or jump higher in a pair of Reeboks and a pair of Nikes. But we can do one other thing. We can play into some cultural phenomenons that are taking place where kids are buying sneakers, and the soles of their sneakers, it has to match their hats and match their jackets. There was this big lifestyle that was taking place around sports apparel. We had the NBA license at Reebok. We had the NFL license at Reebok. Let's use those as our sort of the foundation, the thing that we were going to build our business off of. And we were going to use it basically around color matching, and lifestyle. And we started this line called RBK, which is basically their stock call letters. Right. And created a line.
SKUs, that's what it was.
We created this line, RBK, and it was on fire. I mean, on fire. We signed athletes. We signed Jay-Z, came to RBK, and he developed a line of sneakers called the S. Carter collection, and 50 Cent did the G-Unit collection. But we're talking about $300, $400, $500 million worth of sales coming out of a division that we set up within 2 years. And Paul Feynman gives me a lot of credit for when he sold the company to Adidas for bringing
a couple $2 billion.
Yeah, for the work that we've done to help bring cultural relevancy to his company. And that made me proud.
So what made you write this book? Okay, because it's a lot of time and effort in the book. How did you decide to write the book?
What we've seen over the last 25 years, 30 years, was a generation of kids come together and not differentiate each other through color any longer, but actually come together and understand each other on a term of shared values. You know, if I like sports, you like sports. If I like this, you like that. If I don't like this, it wasn't driven by color anymore. It wasn't. No longer did your ethnicity predetermine what you valued culturally. And I wanted to write a book that spoke about that phenomenon, and I call that tanning. This whole tan mental complexion of this generation. And I didn't want that to just come by and happen and not have any book or anything that sort of memorialized the process that led to this point. And that's why I wrote the book, because I feel like culture has done more to bring this next generation together than anything since Dr. Martin Luther King.
So let's talk about the great event that took place in 2013 when you were given the award as the Advertising Executive of the Year and your parents were in the audience. How do you feel about that? Here's a guy who really wasn't in advertising. You didn't even know what the word advertising was.
No, you're
Okay.
you're stretching it.
Okay. No, but so how do you feel about that?
It was a very special moment for me to get an award like that. That you know, Advertising Executive of the Year. Like, I mean, I just saying it right now just sounds. I would never dreamt that I would ever get that. That I would leave the record business and then 10 years later get such an accolade. But again, I believe that if you say what you do and you work really hard, then everything is possible. I really believe that. So when you get to that point and you get these accolades, it still feels exciting, and you know, you're not numb to it. But you kind of expect that if you do those things, you hope that your philosophy is true. And that was nothing more than paying credence to the fact that I know that, Steve, if you just keep following this rule of believing in yourself and doing what you say and trying your best, that whatever's for your tomorrows, you know, you'll get there. You'll secure your tomorrows.
Let's talk about the love of your life, your daughter. Tell me about her.
Sophia is an amazing girl. She's 9 years old. And I used to be the boss. You know, for many years, I started my own company, I built my own business, and I was the boss. And in the last 3 years, I would say that I work for her now. She's definitely she's actually started to figure out that if, as I control the business, that it'll be our business ultimately one day. So she's making sure.
So she's preparing.
Yeah, she's preparing. Yeah,
for the next stage.
Yeah.
One quick comment. So you're coming out with a VH1 series on this?
A documentary. It's coming out February 24th through 27th on VH1. And they turned the book into a documentary. Great narrative, great interviews of people who have been pivotal in moving tanning forward over the last 30 years. And, you know, it's one of the rock docs, the Emmy Award series, and I'm proud to be a part of it, and I hope that people who watch this fine show will tune into VH1 and watch that.
We hope so. So I'd like to say, you know, in your relatively short life, a very interesting life, you've accomplished a lot. And as you said, one thing that you said in the book and in the articles, you need failure to go to the next step.
Yeah.
Not real failure, but you need challenges. And I'm certain that in 10 years, there'll be a different thing. And hopefully you'll come back to this show or another show in the future. And thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, Michael.